Okay, so we're back at it then. Part 2 of this big ash piece. As you can see, we're on the floor and I've got to sand this rough area that I couldn't turn. So we're going to try and do that in a minute. I'm going to get the wire brush on the drill out first, try and get as much of the loose rot off as I can and try and get some of this glue off before I put the big Makita belt sander onto it. That's going to be the first job. Get it flat and then flip it over and start working on the rot on the front side of this piece. Okay, so in the last video I was using the pt2 turbo plane and I was going around the holes in the natural edge just to try and tidy it up a little bit and get back to a little bit of firm wood. I wasn't trying to lose the edge, just the sharpness of that natural edge, and really just get rid of anything that was loose or likely to break off once I've done the decoration. So that's what I was doing there. Now, the decoration is going to be really complicated on this. There's going to be lots of different processes. The whole piece, front and back, has now been sanded to 120. So I know I'm going to only go to about 240 because I know I'm going to use Osmo to finish as an oil. And really, you can't go finer than 240 with Osmo because it just won't go, it won't penetrate. It'll be too smooth, the surface of the wood, that is. So I'm at 120 grit, and now is the time where we're gonna do some fancy stuff. Now, what I'm about to show you is hugely expensive and massively time consuming. Basically, what I'm gonna do is all the natural edge and all the low points are gonna be, for the want of better words, painted. Okay, so I'm gonna add a primer and then I'm gonna add a metallic paint, but it's more like a slip. It's like a thick slip of the metal. I'm gonna let those two dry independently and then I'm gonna put a third coat of the slip on, and whilst that is wet, I'm gonna add an acid. That acid, when it hits, comes into contact with that wet metallic paint slip, will have a reaction that will hopefully create verdigris. Now, if you don't know what that is, go and look at a copper roof somewhere in your neighborhood and you'll see that that copper roof goes green. I can't remember the actual name of the reaction, but it's a natural reaction where the metal is oxidizing and the verdigris grows on the metal, or forms on the metal, giving it a tint of green. Now, you can get different acids so that it will go blue or another color, but I've got the one that goes green. Now, what I've done is I've bought a starter set from a company called Modern Masters. Now, the starter set comprises of 4 small pots, much like this one. Only a small pot. I think it's, let's have a look, see how many milliliters. 473 milliliters, so it's about a can of Coke. Now, there's 4 processes, as I said. This is the first one. And then you've got the actual slip or metal paint, and that comes in this pot. And they do all different types: brass, copper, bronze, all different types. This one is copper. So you put the base coat on quite liberally, anywhere you want it. So you don't want it on the actual surface of the piece. I'm going for it on the shallow points, on the low points, all right? Then I'm gonna apply, once that's dry, I'm gonna apply that. And when that's dry, I put a second coat of that on. And whilst that's wet, I'll then apply the acid. Now the acid comes in a spray pot. I don't use the spray, that's just through my preference. As I say, these 4 pots are 150 quid as a tester set. So it is very expensive. After that, the acid's gone on, you've got to let it dry, let the verdigris form. And once it's got to the stage that you like, because obviously it will keep reacting and get stronger and stronger as time goes on. Once you get to the stage that you like, you apply then the top coat. Now, every single process with these paints, I'm gonna do with a brush, just because I want it in specific areas and those areas only, and it's very expensive. So I don't wanna waste any of it by having to sand off what I don't want. So this is where it's gonna be a massive amount of time to get this where I want it. Now, you can't see much of the platter just because I'm talking to you, but there are thousands of low points. I may well get to an area where I'll just paint the whole area, just for that little area. But there is rot everywhere. There is bug holes in loads of places, and I've just seen one that I need to clear out. So let me just find my chisel. Just have a go at just clearing that bit of waste out, just there, like that. Just get the loose out. Right, so it really is important that, it really is important that you get rid of all loose material. It's gotta go. It's absolutely gotta go. Just mind your ears because I'm firing this up. There you go. What you don't want is to do all this work, all this painting, only to find some of it falls out because you've left some loose in there. So obviously you want to get rid of all the loose. There is no way I can teach you how to paint in a video. There's no way I can teach you the patience you're going to need to do something like this. Obviously, because this is so huge, this is going to take a lot longer than what a smaller project would take. So I'm going to put this on time lapse again, and I'm going to make a start. Whether you watch it all to the end of that time lapse or not, that's entirely up to you. I want to reiterate, this stuff is very expensive and it's going to take me a long time to do. So if you're going to have a go at this, be prepared you're going to need some patience. Right, I'll get myself sorted, get it on the time lapse, and we'll give it a crack. Okay, so that's the first coat done of that undercoat. What a blooming task that is. Right, you gotta have patience for it, I'm telling you gotta have patience. But it does give me the chance, now that that coat is on, that I can show you the center of this piece, just to say that, you know, you've seen where all that rot was and what I was connected to at the back. So this is the front, obviously, but just look in this center section, right here is where the chuck was. So you've got this hole here, this thin little bit of wood here that has rot in it, and then the next hole. So I think I made the right choice in taking it off the lathe and doing all that sanding by hand. Right, so this coat is on, it's drying. It needs to be dry before I do anything else. So I am gonna go put the kettle on. I'm gonna leave this to dry for probably an hour, hour and a half. And then I'm gonna put the second coat, or sorry, the first coat of the so-called metal paint, but it's more of a slip, on. And that's really gonna start making it pop a little bit. I did say in the previous video that I was going to ebonize these bands. So, and I am going to do that, but there's a whole different method that I use for ebonizing. So I want to get all of this copper decoration done and the verdigris set and then the sealer on top. I want all of that done first. Then I'm going to sand all the excess off so that will reveal the bare wood coming up to the edges. And then what I'm going to do is I'll probably get something like a Sharpie pen and just go round and highlight the edges of the bands, both sides, and just so that I've got a clear visual sight of the edge that I'm going to ebonize. Then either side of those bands is going to have the oil put on. And I'm going to do that because the ebonizing solution might bleed into areas where I don't want it. So by putting the oil on first, that prevents the ebonizing solution bleeding. So lots to do before we get to that ebonizing stage, but I just wanted to let you know that that is up and coming. I reckon that there's going to be a third video on this. Not a lot I can do about it. I have no idea how long this video currently is, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording now, let that dry, then come back to you to show you how I apply the next coat. So, kettle's on, speak to you soon. So I've had my coffee and I'm sat there thinking I can't sit here waiting for an hour and do nothing. So I've picked up another piece that I'm working on, and this will give you an idea of what the ash piece is going to look like once I get that verdigris on. This is a sculpture of, and it's made from burr brown oak. I've done the same process as I'm currently doing on the ash one on this. This one, though, is further along in the process, and all the copper has been added, all the verdigris has happened, and I've sealed it. So you can see it in all the natural edging, all the way around, and in the inclusions, it's all been sealed, and the verdigris looks stunning. Now, all that's left for this piece is to have a base applied at the end, which is on this flat here that you can see, and it needs an oil front and back. So I'm just going to give it a quick oil so that you can see how I do that. Basically, I don't want the oil to go where the verdigris is because it's already been sealed with stage 4 of the process. So it's the wood I need to concentrate on. The wood has been sanded to 240 grit, and I'm going to get a bit of old bed sheet that I've cut up and just very, very gently and sparingly apply some Osmo. The Osmo I'm using is the UV protection for 8 doors, so the sun won't bleach the piece when it's sat in somebody's house. And I'm just going to go on like a French polisher and use it really sparingly and just put a layer of this oil on the top. As I said, I'm going to try not to get it on any of that verdigris. I just want the surface oiled. So just keep going until the cloth goes dry and then replenish. Another time consuming thing, but at the end of the day, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing properly, isn't it? Starting to go a bit dry, so let's add a bit more. Of course, once I've done this, I will be going over it with a mop on the drill just to give it a bit of a buff and to take any excess off. That will be just a dry rag prior to the mop. These Modern Masters paints are really quite something, you know. I'm not sponsored by them or affiliated with them. I wish I was, because I can see that I'm probably going to be spending a bit of money with them, but I really like it. I really do. It is a lot of work, but I like this just dug up effect. Fossilized wood, or petrified wood is it called? I quite like that look. So it's not for everyone, well, that I do know, but for me it gives it something quite interesting, I feel. on this piece I didn't do every low point, so every time I come to a low point that hasn't got any of that verdigris, and I'm just applying a little bit of pressure, just enough to squeeze the rag so that more of the oil comes out of the rag and falls into that little hole, just so that the whole surface gets a good coat of oil. Osmo is one of those oils, or one of those products, again, that I'm not sponsored by or have any affiliation to, but I use it regularly. It's a brilliant product, especially the UV one, because that allows me to do pieces that can sit in the customer's home and it won't get bleached by the sun. You know, it won't lose its color. So I really recommend it. Right, let me just go and get a rag, a clean rag, and I'll wipe that over. Just to take any excess off. There you go. I really like the effect. The contrast between the copper, the brass, and that oak, I think is quite nice. And as I said before, you can get different types of acid to create different colours of verdigris. So with all the different metal paint or slips that you can then add different acids to create different colours on different metals. So it's worth having a look at this Modern Masters stuff. I know it's expensive, but you know, nothing that's good is cheap at the end of the day, is it? Anyway, hope you like this. I'll let this dry before even attempting to do the other side. And we'll be back to the original piece shortly. So just before we go back to the original piece, I think it's worth pointing out that when I bought this Modern Master stuff, I had a look on YouTube to see if there was anybody using it and how to use it and the best way to use it. There wasn't a lot on YouTube, to be quite honest. The manufacturer, they have put a couple of short videos on YouTube, and although they were explanatory in they explained the process, the 4 step-by-step guides, but they didn't really give a really good direction on what the best surface to use or how to prepare the surface. Really, I've done this through experimentation, but I had an image in my head as to what I wanted the original piece I did with this to look. Now, you've got to experiment with everything new that you try, and I experimented with this Modern Master stuff. Now, I turned the platter and I thought, well, we'll have a go at it. We'll have a try on the smooth surface. So basically what I did is the same process as you've seen me start and do, on the big piece, I did on a small platter across the whole of the surface, just to see what it was like. And I'm going to show that to you now. That is the first attempt with the Modern Masters on a platter on a smooth surface. And to me, that is pants. is absolutely awful and wasn't what I had as an image in my head. So what I'm going to say to you is be really sure about what you're going to do, because this stuff is expensive. This is 150 quid just for those 4 pots as a tester kit. And I wasted quite a bit of it doing that. And this stuff really doesn't suit a flat surface. It really doesn't suit that, in my opinion, just through my experience. So, but what it does suit, as you saw in that burr brown oak, is the nooks and crannies, the natural edging. It suits it because when you put that acid on, it runs into the low points, and so you'll get a bolder colour green in where there's more acid than where there's less acid, where it's run off of. And it just looks totally natural. This doesn't look natural to me. You know, it's just a piece of ash, the same as that big one, same tree, but it just looks pants. To me, it just looks pants. It didn't work. So before you go buying this and playing with it, bear in mind, in my opinion, I don't think it works on a flat surface. It may work on a smaller flat surface if you were to turn 2 channels with a skew chisel and have like a bead, and then you did it on the bead. It may work then, but over a large flat surface, as you can see, to me it just looks a blooming mess. It may be that it's my fault, and that's because that was the first attempt of the process that I did something wrong. That may be a fair point to make, but I won't ever do that again. I won't ever put this stuff on a flat surface as big as that again. Never again. To me, that looks so much better and more natural. So, just a tip for you. Not so good on a flat surface, in my opinion. Have fun if you do try it though. And remember, you need patience. Right, let's get back to the big piece. Okay, so we're back at the big piece now. All of that initial first coat is dry. So I'm going to start with the copper paint or slip, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to start applying that. I think it's important at this stage to remember there are 4 stages to this. You've got the undercoat, you've got 2 coats of the copper paint, and then you've got the acid. So it's 5 stages, 5 things you're putting on top, the acid, and then the top coat, which seals it, stops it going any further. You've got to be really careful here that you're not filling in all of these cracks and voids, because you don't want to fill it in, you want to layer it. You want to cover the surface in those cracks and voids with each of the layers, but without filling the hole, because you want them to be lower. So go careful when you're applying it. You do need to apply it quite liberally, but you don't want to fill those voids. And with that said, I'm going to crack on. I will probably stop this in a moment and put on time lapse so that you're not sat there just watching me paint wood. Right, here we go. So the brush is dried out, which is typical, although it's clean. Right. You have got to work the brush, so be prepared that you're going to go through some brushes doing this as well, because as the brush goes over the rough wood, you're going to start losing bristles, and just eventually the brush gets knackered, doesn't it? So you want that paint to get right down in those cracks. Work it right down. Right, I'm going to put this on time lapse now. First coat of that copper paint then is on, and time is marching on. That's got to dry fully before I can put the second coat of that copper paint on. So I'm probably going to have to leave it there for today and for this video. Masses and masses left to do on this piece. We got the second coat of copper to go on, the acid to go on. That's got to be allowed to dry, probably overnight, to allow that verdigris to take place or take shape. And then the top coat's got to go on. That's got to be overnight to dry, to fully harden up. Then the piece has got to be sanded. Then it's got to be oiled. Then it's got to be ebonized and carved. Then it's got to be oiled again, because obviously the ebonizing and the carvings won't have any oil on, so it's got to be oiled again. And then we've got to do the back. So next step really is to allow this copper to dry. Then of course, when it's dry, we got to flip the piece upside down to make sure I've got both the undercoat and the first coat of copper on all of the natural edge. And if it isn't, then I've got to apply it and then allow that to dry. As I said before, this is a long-winded process with this stuff, but I feel it's worth it. So we'll end video 2 here, and I'm off working away from the workshop for the next couple of days. So the next video, I suspect, will be towards the end of the week. I hope you have a good week wherever you're doing. Stay safe, keep smiling, and if you're a woodworker like me, keep enjoying it. Take care now.